the devil, he knows the human nature. This is what triggers that desire, whether it be greed, whether it be significance, whatever's out there, that whole thing, that desire to have it is what drives the temptation. And the enemy knows that.
You know, back in the day, we would see those cartoons and they would literally have like the angel and the devil over the shoulder. Mm-hmm. I mean, it really is like that, where you're gonna want to do certain things, but then it's like your angel's gonna say, well, no, we're not, let's not do this because it's, and you have to have that internal battle every day.
Welcome to the Today Tomorrow podcast. So glad that you joined us today. Fellas, first question. Temptation. Now, we all know what temptation is, okay? And we're not about to, throw out some specifics. We're not trying to hurt nobody's feelings. And I don't want y'all to be too open in this conversation today.
Are you trying to save us?
I'm trying to save us. In the front.
You're trying to save us.
But tell me, what's the biggest issue that you've seen when it comes to the subject of temptation for men?
Oh, for men. Well, hey, women.
Yeah.
Women, let's be honest, be real. I mean, hey, look, one thing I'll say, and I always say this and I make it clear, I'm happily married. God made Sherry for me. Hey, this is the truth. I'm putting out facts now. And the thing is that, I don't deal with that temptation like I did before I got married. So let's go back in time. Okay. So, growing up a kid, dating and all that. Yeah, women was the temptation. It's like, it was one of those things where, me and my boys, whatever, who get the most numbers, all this other stuff. You see something visually, hey, I want it. And then, but let's go past that. I think temptation starts with the eyes. And whether it be money, whether it be a lifestyle, whether it be a position, whether it be a woman, whatever the case may be, it starts with what we see and then we want.
And I do think it's important, though, for us to say, because it's some brothers on here or sisters that's like, well, that's not my thing. Like, temptation and lust affects us all in some shape or form. Mm-hmm. But it's different with some people, because it is some brothers where, women or just being attracted to the opposite sex, that's not their thing. So if you're overcoming something, you're like, oh yeah, I'm good with that. That's not really the struggle. What you have to do is identify what is your struggle for something, because we all have it. This is a part of us being human. We all have flaws. We all have sins. We all have things that we have to overcome daily.
I think temptation, when the subject is talked about, it's always 9 times out of 10 in a negative light. We are tempted to do good things. It's like that.
I like
the
that.
word temptation isn't a negative word, but where it gets a little funky is when the desire is for something that might not be for you at that time, or it might be for you to do something that is actually going to negatively affect you, or it's for something that flat out just should not even be in your scope at all. Mm-hmm. And so temptation, when giving myself the same question, I think one of the biggest issues that we run into when it comes to temptation is desiring something that isn't for us.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. That's and I think, I never thought about the positive side. Well, I say positive. You're right. That's something we need to probably dive into too. But you're right. Usually it's something that's not good for us. Mm-hmm. And so why do we want it? If it's not good for us, why do we want it?
I was just thinking that, because I'm happily married also. So at a time, long ago, we'll say,
in a far distant world.
Yeah. It's been, and it's fun. Let me say this too, because I want to give full credit. This is not my saying, but I heard it and I was so inspired by it. I was telling you, Rob Bowden, he gave a amazing breakdown of how to, kind of navigate through these temptations during the prayer call this past Friday on his, I think it's called God's Plan. So basically what he was saying is we almost have to literally wrestle against sin and temptation daily versus being dominated by it. Mm-hmm. And as soon as he said it, I was like, oh my God, I know exactly what he means, because it's like a fight.
Yeah.
When you're in a fight, are you going to fight back? Because we all have temptation. Or are you just going to be dominant, say, that's just what we do? If I wasn't supposed to do it, why am I attracted to it? That's how a lot of people in the world justify. It was a time back in the day, like you said, we come up, I can remember being in kindergarten and my uncle's like, you got a girlfriend? You only got one. You ain't got, so already it's like we're getting these seeds planted. And so you grow up thinking things are a certain way. You have to literally get to a point as a man or a human, an adult, because this goes for females too. You gotta actively see yourself a certain way and go towards that. And understand it's gonna be a fight though. So you gotta wrestle against the temptation versus just letting it just whoop on you and dominate you.
Temptation in general, I mean, we all got it. And it goes back to the root. Adam and Eve, boom.
Yep.
The sin itself. I mean, Eve was tempted by the devil to take the fruit that God told him not to take. She bit into it. She gave it to Adam. Adam didn't have to eat it, but he was tempted, so he ate it as well too, because it looked good. It was portrayed to be good. So, and plus they wanted it.
If you have the things that are fulfilling your needs, why in our human makeup are we naturally inclined to be tempted? Like, I got all of this, but you know what I'm saying? Like, you're looking over here. Why is that?
So, and this is my commentary. God, the only one can answer the question. But really deep down, I think we desire to be God that caused us to go against his law. Mm. I mean, truthfully, because what? The devil laid it out like, hey, God don't want you to know this. So, I got to think going to their head, well, if I eat this, I'll know more. You know what I'm saying? Hmm. The devil, what, he rebelled, because he wanted to be God. So I think the heart of our rebellion or our temptation is to be something higher than what we are. And nobody going to come out and say they want to be God, but you pushing to know and do and have something that will elevate you.
I think to answer your question, again, God knows the answer. But because it was a conversation that she was having. And so, right, Adam has the understanding that the garden, you got everything that you need right here. You don't need to go somewhere else. God already set it up so where you got what you need. Eve came in later on. She didn't get the direct instruction from the commander, God. And so what's not said, but what was supposed to be, what we understand, our understanding is that he gave it to her. He told her, this is what God said, this is our direction, this is what we're supposed to do.
He being Adam.
Right. And so, but then when the serpent came out, you could see in his questioning that it wasn't necessarily, the first issue was that he got her to start thinking about lack instead of the abundance. Mm-hmm. So it wasn't necessarily I don't think it was like, Eve is just a terrible person. The only thing that changed, because she had the abundance still, it was still there. The only thing that changed was her shift and focus, not for what I have, but what I don't have. You don't have the knowledge that, you don't have the ability to know good and evil. You didn't need that. Eve didn't need that at that point in time. And so when she shifted her focus on what she was lacking, now she's like, okay, now the tree that you were not supposed to eat from seems a little bit more desirable because now I'm thinking about what I don't have.
And I think that's very important to kind of resonate on for a minute, because going back to our previous conversation about how powerful your circle is, you have to be very cognizant and aware of who you have as advisors, because the power of suggestion is extremely strong. That's why the marketing companies are a multi-million-dollar industry, where if it's a Sprite commercial comes on right now, 7 times out of 10, I'm like, man, I can use Sprite right now, you know, because the power of suggestion is so strong. So you have to understand who you have close to you and what thoughts they're bringing into the equation. Another thing is too, be careful about that social media, because I think social media is really, really good. I think it's many, like my algorithm is awesome. I get, because people are like, man, I got to fast from social media. And I'm like, man, I get, because I don't know, but I think maybe I create a good algorithm.
Well, you know, it's just the verb for a minute. You bring up a good point. What you search is what you get.
It's going to give you more of. So why it's important though is if you're waking up and the first thing you're doing is popping on social media, you're allowing thousands and thousands of thoughts to enter your mind before you even set the tone before you even talk to God, before you even set your game plan for your day. You're allowing whatever everybody else is going through. So I always tell people, be very careful about that. Like me personally, I don't get on social media at least until about maybe an hour and a half, 2 hours after I'm already into my morning routine.
I mean, that too, I mean, that's again, we're talking about you've chosen to focus on certain things. And so now you decided that you're going to go on certain pages, you know, like certain things, share certain things. And now the algorithm is meant to give you more of that. Because that's what you intentionally did it. But most people, they're focused on this. Okay, now I'm looking at this video, this video, this video, this video. I'm consuming a lot of this stuff. And so now the algorithm is giving you more of that. And now it's making you focus on this thing, because now when you put the phone down, that's what you're thinking about.
Sure.
But I wanted to go ahead and touch on that point, because I didn't think about this before we had started this episode, but marketing is what I do. Marketing is what I do every day. Mm-hmm. And this whole, that very point, when we're talking about temptation, it is literally my job to get people, it's literally my job to foster conclusions in your mind. It's like Inception. Mm-hmm. So the whole idea is, I'm tempting you, and my job is to get you tempted enough to buy this thing, to click this link, to go to the link in the bio, to subscribe to this channel. So the idea is, I need you to think of Focus 417 as a trustworthy and credible marketing company. They're showing it, and then they're saying it. In order for me to foster a conclusion in your mind, what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you a testimonial. I'm going to show you 20. I'm going to show you 100 testimonials that all are saying, oh, Focus 417, the best company I ever worked with. Oh, Focus 417, always on time. Oh, Focus 417, always delivers on their promises. Oh, Focus 417. Why? Not because if I just come on a video and I say, you need to believe that we are trustworthy, who cares? Mm-hmm. But if I show you that 100 testimonials of other people saying it, now you think, you know what? I think that Focus 417, they might be pretty credible.
You know, so trustworthy. As you say this, though, and I love the words you use to describe that whole process. It's pretty smooth how you foster conclusion. Foster conclusion. I'm like, okay, I had to use that instead of temptation. But it's it's not. And it's not temptation. As you was talking, I think it's two different things. All right. I think to get someone to kind of conclude that they want something is and I think this is what when you start talking about marketing is really what they're doing. They're like, they're trying to let you need this, you want this. The temptation comes in when we are trying to make a decision whether we're gonna do it or not.
The temptation comes in when it connects with the desire that you already have.
Yes, there you go.
And that's what I was about to say, because for whatever reason, that Sprite commercial or that Snickers ad, we naturally want the chocolate.
Get thirsty, though.
Yeah. And the thing is, this is the thing. That's not going to quench your thirst. The water will, but that for some reason, I've heard people say, like, I'm like, you don't drink water. Like, that's crazy to me. I love water because to me, That's the only thing that quenches your thirst, but it doesn't have all the flavors. It doesn't have the carbonation. It's, so these are the things where we have to be able to differentiate what's real and what's really going to fulfill us versus what's just empty. And it's almost like a drug concept.
Yeah,
you get a hit and you're like, oh man, you get this like burst of endorphins.
If you feeling great, you having a great day, you are fully hydrated, the Sprite commercial ain't gonna do nothing to you, right? It don't matter. But if you in the desert, right, you ain't had a drink of water in a whole day, and I say, well, Sprite, quench your thirst. Now Sprite, you're not looking at the label. Well, you know what? I don't think that this is gonna do X, Y, and Z. You're not looking through all this other stuff. It's like liquid. I need this now. And then you make the decision. And so coming back, temptation. Because temptation is that temptation has to come from a desire. Because if you don't want nothing, then you don't need to do nothing.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. And so when we're talking about temptations that put people in messed up situations, temptations that lead people to the wrong relationships, temptations that put people in jail. I mean, it's because there's a desire, but when that desire is acted upon in a way or outside of the context that it should be, that's when we get into trouble.
Yeah.
For example, we know that the Bible talks about not having sex before marriage.
Mm-hmm.
But we all have the natural desire to be sexual.
Yeah.
Natural. That's a natural thing. It's not a bad thing. Like God put that in there for a reason.
Yeah. Yeah.
But there's a context for it as well.
Mm-hmm.
And so my desire is not a natural. It's not a bad thing that I have it. But when it's in the correct context, now it's not a negative thing for me to have the temptation to do it. Okay.
Gotcha.
If I'm married to the person,
Mm-hmm.
outside of that, now it's a desire, but if I act on it, now I'm going in the wrong direction.
The devil he knows the human nature. Mm-hmm. He knows what works from a marketing standpoint, right? So, in a way, you talk about that algorithm. It's like they know what buttons to push to say, oh, I've seen this before. Human nature, when it comes to sex, boom, this is what sells. This is what triggers that desire, that triggers the temptation. And then whether it be greed, whether it be significance, whatever's out there, there's that whole thing, that desire to have it is what drives the temptation. And the enemy knows that. And our heart, we're born with a sinful heart, so the trigger is already there. It's already there.
That's the key. We're born with a.
Raise your hand if the devil walked up to you and told you to do something. I imagine no one's hands up.
No.
Because the reality is he doesn't need to.
No.
You already have a desire. And as long as he understands that, as long as he understands your psychology, he understands what makes you tick, he needs to just show you something. All he needs to do is just give you a crumb that puts you in the direction that you should not be going down.
Yep.
The way I think about it, and I heard this from somewhere too, but it's almost like, back in the day we would see those cartoons and they would literally have like the angel and the devil over the shoulder, and they would be having like a little battle above the head. And I mean, it really is like that, where you're gonna want to do certain things, but then it's like your angel's gonna say, well, no, we're not, let's not do this because it's, and you have to have that internal battle every day. And the answer of who's gonna win the battle is just whatever you feed the most. It comes down to, how do you discipline yourself? How do you train yourself? What's your greater purpose? Like, whose are you? We're going back to the word, we know we're not supposed to be doing certain things. If you've fallen down, you've done certain things, that's not for us to judge and say, you did that. You're going like that. I don't believe in that personally. So you have to, this because spirituality is a personal relationship. End of the day, we all have to answer for our sins, but the thing is, we've had someone that's paid the price for us. So we can come back to him and say, you know what? I've sinned, I've fallen, I've confessed, I've fallen short, and I'm going to try to get better every day. And it's not to be abused though. So don't take this as you can just do whatever you want. And then every day you can just say, oh, well, I did, I went out there and had the time of my life. But hey, it doesn't work like that, because God knows your heart. God knows your thoughts before you think them. So even if you think you're trying to trick him, you're really just tricking yourself.
So my job is to peak temptation in people. And it works from a message, market, and medium. When those things match together, you reach peak, because we're going to use the word temptation here. Peak temptation for people. And what I mean by that is, if I hit you with the right words, right? Something that you would say, something that not, because I can talk all this jargon or whatever, but if that's not how you speak and you don't know what those terms mean, then you're not going to relate to that. You're not going to actually receive it. So I'm going to use words that you speak. And then if I do it at the right time, meaning it's that point, talking about Sprite here. If it's that point where you actually thirsty and I hit you with the right message at the right time and at the right medium, meaning that I know you be scrolling through Instagram. Mm-hmm. So I'm gonna hit you with it on Instagram with words that are relatable to you. And while you thirsty, we got peak temptation. Relate that to every scenario here. If I'm a dude and I'm married, I'm putting myself in the wrong place. I ain't seen my wife in a minute. I'm feeling some type of way. Mm-hmm. Shorty come and say some stuff to me. She complimenting me in ways that my wife has never done it, or she hasn't done it in a long time. Mm-hmm. And then I'm sitting there listening to this conversation for longer than I should have. I haven't seen my wife in a long time. I have the offer, because this is, again, we're talking about business here. You give them an offer that you cannot refuse. You trying to come with me?
See,
that's when people fall in the wrong thread.
That's a trap.
But it's a trap, but it still has to be. It has to be that open. It still comes back to self. You do have a choice though. Because even if you show the Sprite a million times and you make it marketable using my words, and if I don't drink Sprite, then I just don't drink Sprite. Right. And that's kind of what we're saying, where it's applicable to all things, where you have to put yourself in your mind, and with and this is an evolution. Like, this is a thing this is not something that happens overnight. I'm in my process right now. Like, I'm getting closer to God every day, and it's exciting for me, and everybody has to go through their own process, because it really just comes down to that. Like, when you put your mind, it's spiritual. You put your spirit in a sense where certain things just can't reach you. And the problem is it's not enough of us that have gotten to that point where we're willing to fight like that against the temptation.
So one, I think 1 Corinthians 10:13 talks about temptation and the fact that all things are known to God, and He always gives us an out. That verse tells you that there's always an out to the temptation.
Yep.
And and I remember reading that, like, man, that's so true. Because every time when you talk about scenarios that pop up, there's going to be an out. There's always an out.
It's always an out.
The question is, do you take it? And the other thing that comes to mind too, as we talk about this, so everybody understands, God does not tempt. God does not tempt. So somebody like, well, what do you mean? God don't tempt. God tests. Mm-hmm. He don't tempt. Okay, so God will test us, but He will not tempt us.
It's an important point.
It is. So when a temptation comes up, we go to God to ask for strength, or we've been conditioned or whatever. We get through that temptation. We've been tested by the temptation, but God didn't put it out there. But He will test us in situations to help increase our faith.
That's the thing. Like, again, you do, like you said, you have the opportunity to do what you want. Nobody's making you do nothing, mm-hmm. right? But if you put yourself in that environment, right? If you put yourself in that bar at 2:00 in the morning, you set yourself up. Mm-hmm. Now you gonna have, you still have the opportunity. You still have there's a door. You can leave.
Yeah.
But now it's like the temptation is now, instead of it just being like a small little chimpanzee.
Superhuman.
Yes.
Out it's King Kong trying to get you.
But this is important going back to our previous conversation. Sometimes, we can bring our friends along, and sometimes we gotta find some new friends. Because if my friends are Martell, Rodney, what we think is fun is getting up early doing the podcast Saturday morning, or I was last night, my Friday night, it was lit. I was at a real estate event. It's like your fun has to be, you gotta find the individuals that are having that like-minded fun, because if you associate fun times only with going to Vegas, getting drunk, or whatever.
You were talking about how it's a consistent battle type of sandwich. Hey, on it. The reason that I'm related to marketing, right? Right. I'm related to marketing one more time just for this, because sometimes, like, you might listen to a sermon, or you might listen to an episode like this. You might be like, all right, temptation, I'm about to beat it. You high motivation. And then you go and you face the temptation that comes at you, and you're like, oh, I'm not doing that. And so you get past it. What you don't realize, and what I need you to realize, is that it's not over. It's gonna keep coming at you. And the thing about, like, whatever the thing is that is gonna, self-awareness, very important. Looking yourself in the mirror, we've talked about this a billion times. You gotta understand what tempts you. So you're not getting into that environment, so that you are not in the situation where you need it, where you have that peak desire. You gotta make sure that you are not in that environment, because the battle is not over. Just because you won this one time, don't mean it's not gonna come back over and over again. Like, the reason why Sprite, they've got billboards, commercials, they've got ads on Instagram, Facebook, they've got flyers out, they've got a sales team. The reason that they got all this is because they want to stay in your face. They know that it's going to be between 7 and 12 times of them seeing you before you are in the right environment time where you are thirsty. And you've gotten you've seen them enough times to where it's like, oh, you know what? I remember there was that one Sprite. And now you're in the store, you're thirsty, and you're trying to figure out what to drink. And you done seen the billboard as you drove up, you scrolled through Instagram and saw an ad, you just watched the Super Bowl, and now this is the only thing on your mind. What you gonna buy?
You gonna buy a Sprite? Sprite need to pay us, because they didn't even pay.
Right, we're doing too much. But going to your point, it's a constant battle. And that's why I love that illustration that Rob had used with wrestling against sin and temptation versus just being dominated by it. Because if you can't think of it any other way, it's really kind of, you being a punk.
Yeah.
If you can't, in us, if you put it in that terms, like, you gonna just let somebody just come and just wail on you, and you just falling in like, oh man, they done got me. You know what I'm saying? That's not, and I know this might go against turn out the cheek, but you want to wrestle against it. You want to fight against. You got to have a battle plan. Going back to what Martell was saying, if you know you're tempted with certain elements, maybe you can't go to that bar. You know what I'm saying? Maybe you can't show up at that event because that's not the right environment. So that's where the battle plan comes, because you don't want to put yourself in a situation where you got to have this superhuman willpower because you're around all the temptations that you have.
You're gonna lose.
You're gonna lose.
And I think it's a pride thing too. If you walk in thinking you so tough and you so fortified that nothing gonna penetrate you, that's a pride thing. You trying to tempt your relationship with God, like, hey, oh Lord, you got me so fortified, I can go. No, you don't want to do that. But the other thing too, and I can't remember, both of you said it, but that temptation is gonna keep coming. And what happens is it's gonna come in a different form. Just so you talk about the whole marketing and all that, they look for that opening where it's gonna hit. And the same thing is true.
Ask me once, see if I don't hit you again.
Exactly. It's not gonna give up. And the whole thing about, and that's where the walk, that our spiritual walk, the Holy Spirit talking to that those two individuals talking to us, and that whole wrestling with sin, that struggle you were talking about, not being a punk. And it's a good analogy because, I think we all been in like our little squabbles or have some dealings. You can let somebody beat you up every day, take your lunch money, and you just deal with it, just sit there and just be down and just become a victim. To me, when you shared that, to me, that's like, okay, are you just going to be a victim? Are you just going to be a victim?
Or you going to put up a fight?
Or you going
to continue to fight?
Yeah.
Because the fight is on.
One thing to also think about is once you lose the battle, it just gets stronger. Like the temptation gets worse. Like if you thought it was gonna get easy, spoiler alert, it's not. The thing is, temptation is gonna come again.
Yep.
Once you beat it, it's easier to beat it the next time. But if you lose, my goodness, it's gonna get hard.
Because it's a evolving process. The higher you elevate, we're talking about this in Men 2.0. The higher you elevate, the stronger the temptation, the stronger the enemy's gonna try to get, because they can't get you with normal things. It's not even gonna touch your radar. If you're up here, it doesn't matter what's going on down here, but they gotta touch your radar. So it's gonna be bigger, more potentially impactful things.
Yep.
Consider it joy if the temptation has to change the format on you.
Yeah.
Because you're beating one of them.
That's a sign of progress. No, it's not over, but it's a sign of growth because our faith becomes stronger. We become more aware. It goes back to that whole struggle, that wrestling thing, that fighting. If you fight, you're gonna fight all the time. You're gonna learn from that fight.
Yep.
You're gonna learn your enemy moves. And when you conquer those moves, they gotta come up with new moves. And then you're gonna have to
Make adjustments. You gotta make an adjustment for that adjustment.
Yep. So hey, we need to close this out.
Thank you. We're gonna have to do something. We're gonna definitely have to come back.
Yeah.
We're gonna never have to come back to this. But thank you guys for being here. Definitely, I want to go ahead and throw it to Mike to shout out. What was it you wanted to shout out?
Yeah, well, so a couple Saturdays ago, we had our Men 2.0 meeting. All right, so every second Saturday of every month, we got some good brothers meeting in this actual room, and we sit down, we fellowship, we talk about different scenarios that are coming up, but we base it all on Christian principles. And it's really good because, iron truly does sharpen iron. And if you're in need of an environment where you want to get around some like-minded individuals, you want to get around people that are going to build you up versus, try to tear you down, then this is the room that you need to be in.
Definitely. Thank you for that. Hey, if you like this episode, you're going to love the episode on your screen. Thank you for being here, and we will see you there.
Peace.